right, welcome back. Okay, so we're here at the bench, right? And what I do when I make terrain, somebody else did this. I can't say that I came up with this idea. Of course not. A lot of people have used this technique. But you take a normal CD, right? A normal CD, an old DVD, something that doesn't work or it's scratched or whatever, and they're perfect for using. Let me grab a tape measure real quick. Matter of fact, I'm gonna put this down on my bench and everybody can see what I'm talking about here. Just give me a minute. Matter of fact, I'll put this right over here for a better look. There we go. All right, that's better. So I like using these CDs because they give you it's a perfect round circumference and it's the perfect size for um, making terrain with, right? So these CDs are exactly about 4 3/4 inches in diameter, right? Can you see that roughly? Well, that's perfect for like making terrain, right? So what I do is this is the type of terrain I make with it. So I make these, and you can put whatever you want on top of these. Granted, it's going to be a smaller piece. It's not going to be like a large footprint of a forest or something like that, right? It's not going to be like that. But what I do is I take a CD, I take a CD, I take some foam. I'll peel the paper off the foam. Okay, you've all seen this done before. Like I said, I don't want to be a crafting channel because there's a million of them out there, and it kind of feels fifth grade. But I mean, if somebody asked me and said, "Hey, Mike, how do you do these? What are those things that you made there or something?" I'll be more than happy to tell you and do something with it. But you take the CD, right? And one of the things you want to do with the CD though is you want to take some grit, 100 grit or greater, right? And you want to scratch this surface up, right? You want to give it a good scratching. See, you see if you can see that on there. You want to really give it a good scratching, okay? And once you get it all scratched up, what I use is I had some extra liquid nails laying around, heavy duty liquid nails. Now I use this instead of white glue because white glue ain't gonna stick to that CD. And this is more of a chemical bond than anything else. And it's water cleanup. But this stuff is sort of like the stuff they make for foam. They have a tubed product that you could buy at box stores that you can use and it's specifically made for foam. But it's really just watered down. I think from what I've experienced with it, it's maybe a special formula. I could be wrong, but it seems like a weaker form of liquid nails. That's why it's a little bit cheaper. I mean, liquid nails. I use this stuff because I have a ton of it from using for different projects around the house and outdoor projects and different things that I, during construction. So I have a lot of this. So you use that. You put a little bit of that. You spread that on here real evenly over the whole city out to the edges. Make sure you get the edges because what you don't want to have happen is when you start trimming this up, you don't want the foam to lift up off the CD. So the outer edges, you can slack maybe a little bit in here, but you want a nice bead here and a nice bead around here, and you want to spread it out nice and thin. Then you take your foam and you lay it on top. And you take this, when this is sandwiched, you can make like you can make like 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 of these at a time, stack them all up, right, and then put a bunch of books on them, and wait till overnight till it dries. Then when it dries out, you'll take the you'll take the foam and you'll trim it with your razor knife. You'll see that tapered edge on here, right? You you taper that off, give it a quick sanding real lightly. Make sure you're wearing a mask because it's foam. You don't want to be breathing that stuff in. Or take it outside to do it, or somewhere where it's well ventilated. It's not blowing in your face. That's what you don't want. And then I take some Mod Podge, and you don't even need Mod Podge. You could use. I have this huge container of craft paint, black craft paint, right? You get it at the any one of the art stores, and you can paint that on there. This is better for foam, but it doesn't really matter, and it sticks to the CD if there's a little bit of a CD exposed. Then you take a, you could use, you use a artist's knife, which I thought I had one laying here, and I do actually. I have two. I use two artist knives, and you spread that on, right? You spread that on, spread it over top of the foam. And the idea behind this is you're creating a hardened foam texture to build off of. You're not building onto the CD. You're building on something that whatever you put on this, like PVC or I'm sorry, or you put on white glue or yellow glue or whatever glue you like to use, it will stick to this. And that's the whole process. That's the whole reason why I put this little foundation on here to build up off of. Now, you could use anything um, to make your to build this up. And what I have my own recipe, but I used for this one I had a little bit extra of this left. I used this Vallejo Terra Oscura dark earth uh, uh, mix earth texture on this one. Okay, and then this one's a custom made mix that I made here. Okay, and I made in a jar. This is nothing more than brown inks, brown paints, and sand, different grit sand. You don't want to go too big with the grit, right? You don't want giant chunks. I think the biggest chunk you probably want to get is something like that. You don't want to put big chunks in there. So what you can do is there's a fellow who does a recipe of this on his channel. I'll put a link down to his channel below, and his name's Fritz. He does an amazing. I got this idea from him, and his mix is fantastic. It's drywall compound, a little bit of water, ink, and stains or paints or whatever you want to use because it's all water soluble. So, and you mix that all up and you make this stuff last forever. And if it dries out, you just add more water mixed up. And drywall compound, with the exception of plastic, sticks to pretty much anything. If you ever did drywall work in your life and you accidentally got it on your tools, or if you actually accidentally got it on a piece of brick, that stuff, once it's hardened, it sticks like it sticks incredibly well, especially like the newer batches, the newer 5 gallon containers of drywall compound. It's very durable stuff. You have to scrape it off, right? So it's perfect for this application, right? It's perfect for putting on foam and that sort of thing. And I'll put, like I said, I'll put a link to Fritz's. He does amazing terrain work, and this is super cost effective. You can make this stuff by the half gallon if you wanted to, and you could just set it aside and use it whenever you want. And this is the end texture. Look how nice that texture is when it gets washed and dry brushed. It's awesome. For me, it depends on what you're looking for. So if you're looking for this rough texture, real rough ground, right? Or if you're looking for more of a, you could use finer sand in this. You could use finer sand in that to make something like this. And if I wanted this to be a darker gray, I would just add black to it, blacks and grays and stuff and such until they get to the color that I like. Now this goes on, as you can see, my recipe here is, you see what it looks like wet, right? This is what it looks like when it dries. Okay, so take that into consideration too whenever you're mixing. What you can do is make a sample board. So you can write down your recipe, your mix. It's just like cooking, right? You write down the recipe of the mix that you have. Write it down on a piece of paper, and then next to that little piece of paper, maybe take a little piece of foam and scrape some on and set it aside. Make another recipe, a small batch with certain, like, you might want 1 tablespoon of black, 1 tablespoon of brown, write down the recipe, and then make another sample for yourself to see which one you like the most or which ones you can recreate again. That way, once you have the recipe, you can recreate the mix anytime you want to. So that's how I'm making these. And what I was going to do with these, I make my own Sculpt-a-mold. And I know nobody else on the internet has used the materials I use to make the Sculpt-a-mold, because I looked and I came up with this myself. I looked at Sculpt-a-mold and I said, well, what is Sculpt-a-mold, right? And Sculpt-a-mold was a Sculpt-a-mold is a plaster mixed with fibers, paper fibers, cardboard fibers. I have some of it. Let me see if I can find it real quick. Okay. Yeah, here it is. All right. Sculpt-a-mold is it's a molding compound, right? And it's made with when I took it out of the bag, I noticed right away. I looked at the materials and I says, okay, well, this is just ground up toilet paper and plaster, right? Really well ground up, like paper fibers. And I says, well, I can make that. I can reproduce that, right? Instead of paying all that money for this bag, I can make it. I can make as much of this stuff as I want. And here's how you do it. Here's what I use. I'll show you what I use. And I use that to make, this was a test sample of it. This is what it looked like after I put it over a piece of foam. All right. This was a test piece for a bocage layout I was messing with. And I'm going to show you how you make that right now. So what I use, and you can get these, once again, we're back to the box stores. We're back to like Home Depot or Lowe's. I'm going to bring the camera over here. This is what you get right here. Okay. This is what you get right here. Take a close look at this. Okay. This is sound thermal and fire barrier insulation, right? That's what this is. This is, you can get this big giant bag for relatively cheap. Okay. This is like blow-in insulation. All right. Now I just showed you what that Sculpt-a-mold looked like, right? When you look at this blow-in insulation, check this out. Look here. Look. It's all this is. It's exactly what we were just looking at, right? I'm going to take us over to the bench. This is nothing more than, this is blown in insulation. Look how fine it is, and it's paper. You see the paper pieces in there? It's like they put it into a grinder of some sort, and they just grind it all up. Probably cleaning it too at the same time, right? So you take this, you take that, right? You take this, and you mix that with any type of plaster, and you mix it. You can mix it with. I've been experimenting with 20-minute drywall compound, plaster of Paris. What's the other? There's a I can't think of the name of it right now, but there's another um, type of. Um, it's a powder mix. It's harder. It's called hydrocal, right? And you can mix that with. There's harder forms of plaster, right? That you can get. Now I don't like that harder stuff. I'll use like a normal plaster. You can also use. I've seen a lot. One experiment I want to try is brown coat plaster. There's when you do plastering work, there's like a brown coat you put on first before you put the smooth white coat on. And I'm going to think about, and it's very gritty and it dries real fast. So I've been experimenting with it, but this works excellent. So you take this and you mix it with plaster, you make it into a paste where it's like squishy paste, but you have to make sure this is soaked with plaster, right? You want them soaked through and through. You could even throw a little yellow glue in it if you want to. You come up with your own recipe. You mix that all up, and then once you get it, you literally make it so that you can sculpt it and you can put it onto one of these forms and you can sculpt it into whatever you want. So if you wanted to make a little pit in the middle of it, remember this will be covered with plaster, you can do that, right? And when this dries, it's incredible. When it dries up, it looks something like this. And it's perfect. It has this incredible texture on it. It's awesome for making any kind of terrain. And it's so much cheaper than getting Sculpt-a-mold. Now look, if you can afford the Sculpt-a-mold and you don't want to go through all this trouble, by all means get the Sculpt-a-mold. I mean, you can't. Sculpt-a-mold's fine. I've used it. Like I even have a bag, right? But I wanted to see what it was made out of, and I've used it before. So if you want to get yourself, I mean, look at this bag. Look how big his bag is. I have all the Sculpt-a-mold I want now. That and a bag of plaster will take bag of plaster mix will last me. I'll probably be dead before it even gets used up. My family that would remains after I pass away will probably end up throwing it in the trash because they'd have no clue that I come down here with my hobbying and what I'm using that for. They probably thought it was for some job or something. But anyway, that you can make your own stuff and make it cheaper than you can instead of spending like on the mat, the game mat, for instance. Instead of spending $100 on a mat, I always take the approach that well, if 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 I got $100 to spend, what would I want to spend that on? Guess what? More miniatures, boxes of miniatures for playing war games. Without the miniatures, everything you know, what's good's the terrain without miniatures? So I would rather spend that $100 on uh, buying more miniatures for all the things that I want to play. And I have lots of rule books. And I haven't played a lot of stuff. So I would you rather use that money for paints, which are I think a priority in gaming if you're wargaming, and because I enjoy the hobby too. So paints, miniatures are the essentials for uh, playing war games, and I think that that's what you should try to budget your money that way. If you and try to enjoy the hobby if you can. I mean, some guys don't like doing this. You know, you may be the type of person who doesn't is you're not crafty, but you're learning. That's okay too. I have lots of mistakes. I have a lot of mistakes laying around my bench. Okay, I could show you, I could show you mistakes. Okay, I could show you mistakes, but it's all about trial and error. You're learning something. It's a hobby. It's like it's no different than model railroading, right? I enjoy model railroading as well. I don't do it as much. I'm not nowhere near what some of these guys are or their channels with model railroading do, because they're more like enormous dioramas. But a lot of the techniques you see there, you can bring over into gaming as well, into miniature wargaming. So anyway, that's all I got for right now. Um, if I have any other additional uh, pictures or videos of me doing some of this, maybe I'll do a video on when I mix up the Sculpt-a-mold, my homemade Sculpt-a-mold, and I'll show you what I use there and how to go about mixing it. I'll show you what mix I'm going to use, and then I'll show you the results because like I said, I'm trying to find something that because it takes a considerable amount of time to dry, right? Because you have this mixed with water and plaster, but they have there are powder type plaster mixes and drywall mixes that have an accelerated set time. So I want to experiment with that and see if it's something that I can mix my own Sculptor mold and by the next day it's dry, right? So I'm gonna be looking into that as well. So and I made a bunch of stuff with it already, and it's all turned out pretty nice. So until then, I'll talk to you for more tips on or some of the things that I do for gaming and some of the things that I build for my games. Thanks for tuning in. Talk to you later.